Empires collapse. If I would need to tell you only one fact about all the empires, I would say this one. Sooner or later, every empire will get to the point of its disintegration. My name is Vladimir Miroshnichenko. I'm the Vice President of Coordinating Council of Circassia, Kuban Republic, and today we are talking about the collapse of empires. So, actually, this topic is very interesting because each empire has its own way to the collapse. For example, what about the Roman Empire? It lost a half of its territory, but it existed for several centuries more, only in the half of its previous territory. Or about the Ottoman Empire. It had a lot of problems. Some regions had the wars with the empires, some regions got independence, but anyway, it was a very big empire, and then in one moment it was like just disappeared completely. Then it got some little part of its previous territory, but not like Ottoman Empire, but like Turkey already. And I think that there are extreme points: the British Empire and Spanish Empire. In what kind it's extreme? I think that the British Empire it's a good way for empire to get collapsed, while the Spanish Empire is the worst possible way. Let's talk about this a little more. So, what about the British Empire? First, it really got troubles with the United States. It got the war, it lost many soldiers, it had a big problem. In the United States, many people hated the Great Britain for some time. Now they don't, but there were some time, etc. Then the British Empire understood that it is not a good way. And when some colonies wanted to get independence or wanted to get more autonomy, the British Empire was saying something like, get as much autonomy as you can bear. So it led the British Empire to a very good relations with the ex-colonies. Now almost all the ex-colonies, I don't know if love Great Britain, but something for there. It's ideal relationship. Many of them still considering the British king as their own king. They are pretty good integrated for the Commonwealth of Nations. They have a lot of integration with the Great Britain and between themselves. The British business is very important all over the world. And the English language is the most popular and most important language in the world. What about the Spain? What about the Spanish Empire? Well, first of all, we have to say that actually it's pretty difficult to compare the British Empire and Spanish Empire just because it got collapsed in different time. The British Empire in the first years of 20th century was like the biggest one, etc. Spanish Empire at that moment already didn't exist. But anyway, what about the collapse of Spain, of Spanish Empire? First, Spain had wars almost with all the colonies. Not only with the first one that decided to get independence, but with the majority of them, with almost all of them. Sometimes Spain tried to just get some parts of the countries that got independent to still control them. After these wars, of course, Spain had pretty bad relationships with ex-colonies, and also the economy of those countries were pretty destroyed because of the wars, because of the destruction of infrastructure, because of the death of the people. So for now, even the Spanish language is not as important as English. Look, there are more native speakers in Spanish language, but if we talk about the importance of two of these languages, both of them are important, but you cannot compare the importance of English with the importance of Spanish. The Spanish business, well, it's still to some degree in many ex-colonies, but it's not comparable again with the British business. No one considers the King of Spain as their own king. The integration, well, there are some integration, like for example Mercosur in the South America, but it's more like geographical integration and the integration that the countries got by themselves, not because of the Spain. Spain just shows us the worst scenario how to get collapsed. The disintegration of the empires is the historical law. you cannot avoid it. You can postpone it or you can make it faster, but you cannot avoid it. You can only decide how your empire will collapse. But wait a minute. Is Russia an empire? Well, let's just see the map of Russia. First of all, we can see that there are 21 national republics. Those are kind of like officially colonies. They have their own language, their own nations, but they are still part of Russia. Also, if we see on the same map, there are yellow regions. Yellow regions are seen by Russia like just regions, although yes, they normally have their own culture and they're pretty different from the Russian regions. If we talk about the orange, the regions that have orange color here, there are autonomous okrugs, so-called okrugs, and also there is one autonomous oblast. So all of the colorful regions here could be considered as colonies, but not only them. For example, there are some regions that would like to be republics, in which there are people who would like to get the independence. First of all, Ingria, it's the region around the St. Petersburg that has the number 7 on the map. The Königsberg or Kaliningrad region, the so-called Sverdlovsk region that wants to be Ural Republic, it's the number 16. So as you can see, Russia is still having a lot of colonies. But it's not only about the colonies, it's not only about the territories. Because we could say, well, the United States are actually states. So we could say that United States are composed from 50 different countries. Well, yes, but the question is not about this. The question is what are the relationship with the center between the center and the regions. Is this the relationship between center and regions or metropolis and colonies? The regions in Russia almost don't have any economical autonomy. The life standard in Moscow and in the rest of Russia is extremely different. Well, there is the Moscow, like the top. There you go with St. Petersburg. There are some big cities and then the rest. Once I just compared Moscow with my home city. I was born in Armavir, but I grew up in Stavropol. So you can just see on the map where is Stavropol if you are interested. I was working in Moscow at that moment and my salary was about $2,000. So I decided to see what would be my salary if I just go with my experience, with my skills to my hometown. And I found that it was $400. 2,400. And it's not only about me. Even if we compare some like workers' professions, the difference will be more or less the same. So it's several times difference. We are talking now about the year like maybe 2012, but the situation didn't change. It even got worse. So why it is like this? First of all, because almost all the taxes are going to Moscow. So it's not something like the region has its own tax system and the federal center has its own. No. It's like almost everything, almost, not all, but almost everything is going to Moscow. And then the Moscow gives some part as it wants. So it doesn't depend on the actual earnings of the region. So as I said, there are almost no economical autonomy. But okay, let's talk about economy in another video because it's an interesting topic how the Russian economy is constructed. But it's not only about economy. Let's say that the governors of the majority of regions are just put by Moscow, even if there are elections, it's not direct elections, it depends on the region, it depends on the period of the history of Putin's Russia because it changed several times. So actually Moscow is ruling all the regions. Also, sometimes, not sometimes, in the majority of cases, the governor of a region doesn't have a link with this region. It's just some guy, sometimes from Moscow, sometimes from completely other region, that the Moscow government just put on its colony, or sorry, its region. So Russia is actually acting as an empire. Now the question is, what about the history of Russian Empire? We are talking about the nowadays, but what about the history? So Russia got to the peak of its power in 1914. Then it started to lose some territories. After the revolution, it lost the Finland, the Poland, some territories in Asia. Then it actually lost a big part of Belarus and Ukraine, but then it got it back after the Second World War. Then Russia lost a lot of territories in 1991. Well, if we consider Soviet Union as the part of Russian history, of course, and as the Russian state, but I would consider it as the Russian state. So it lost a lot of territories in 1991. Then it got some territories back. Sometimes it was so-called non-recognized states, and sometimes it was just a direct occupation like we see in Russia. But anyway, if we see, Russia always loses more than it gets back. So the process of the collapse is going on. But what is this process? As we can see, with all these wars, with no desire to get independence to any colony, etc., Russia is really going by Spanish way. It's like, what are you doing, guys? 200 years passed. You already saw how the Great Britain did it. Why you are not just doing it that way? But well, it's the question for Russia. What is the problem with that? First of all, Russia gets extremely bad relationship with ex-colonies. Really, ask people in any of the ex-colonies of Russia that got independence 100 years ago or that got independence 30 years ago. Do they like Russia? Do they want to be closer to Russia? Doesn't matter if you ask Finland, Poland, or for example, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Lithuania. It's like everyone, I cannot say that hates Russia, but at least doesn't like Russia. You can say, but what about the Belarus? Well, in Belarus, Russia has a good relationship with self-proclaimed president, not with the people of Belarus. It has a lot of impact. For example, with not only with Russian business, which is obvious, but also with, for example, Russian language. People really try to avoid Russian language, to replace it with English or with their national languages. It happens in almost all the ex-colonies of Russia. The Russian business works only in the country where Russia is ruling almost directly. Like for example in Armenia, which got extremely dependent on Russia because it has problems with Azerbaijan, it has problems with Turkey, and Russia is kind of like protector for Armenia. Actually, it didn't work for Armenia, but it's the topic for another video. But the worst thing about this, it's the wars and the people death and the destruction and all of that. So could Russia just change its way? Could Russia just go by the British way still? Well, I don't know. I have my doubts, although I have my hope. First of all, Russia has to choose the democracy. The empire cannot be a democracy. So Russia has never had a democratic leader. Even the most democraticals were just less dictators. We can talk about this. If you are interested to talk, for example, about Boris Yeltsin, who is considered as the Democrat by many people, or Gorbachev, okay, let's talk in another video. Russia should understand that if just give the independence to other countries without the wars and without the conflicts, it would be very profitable for the Russian business. It would be even very profitable for Russian language. For example, if our country, Circassia or Kuban Republic, gets independent without the war with Russia, if we get freedom without fighting with Russians, well, we already fought in the past, but at least without more fighting. I think many people would like to continue using Russian language as one of the official languages of the country. But after the war, it will be like in Ukraine, when people just try to avoid using Russian. I really hope there will be some leaders in the Russian community who understand all of this, who knows the history, who can analyze, and who can understand which way is better. I hope that there will be some leaders of the Russian opposition who can understand that Russia can get disintegrated, but in a peaceful and non-problematic way. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you in the next video.